This is your Day X World War III update. What you're looking at behind me here is an emergency drill currently being conducted by the U.S. Capitol Police and the U.S. military. They're saying this is routine, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it might have something to do with evacuating all the VIPs and bigwigs next week when this place is descended upon by some of the 150 million people who don't win the election. Just a hunch. This is seeming to be the most contentious election in U.S. history. However, I still think people are too lazy nowadays to actually want to go and self-sacrifice and give something up that actually requires blood and sweat and tears. So I don't think people are actually going to revolt or really do much besides maybe throw a few Molotov cocktails, the usual stuff. In terms of actual resistance and revolution and that sort of thing, it's not going to happen. People will go back to watching wrestling and dyeing their hair blue. But I do think that there will be civil unrest either way, because both Kamala and Trump, according to their body language, seem to think that they have it in the bag and they're both going to win, especially with Kamala. She really looks like she thinks she's going to win. Now, I'll tell you who doesn't give a shit who wins, and that's the people with real money and power. They don't care. They understand that this is all bread and circuses, and nothing quite epitomizes the bread and circus as what we've seen at Madison Square Garden over the weekend. Hulk Hogan, Madison Square Garden, that's the epitome of bread and circuses, okay? Kamala Harris, Beyonce, whatever sort of equivalent on the other side, hey, same thing, man. I don't do this political bullshit. You're not pigeonholing me into one side or the other because it's convenient for you. I'm a thinking person, okay? I'm a realist, and it is what it is. That's why you guys come here, I hope. Now, we got to talk about what's going on with Iran and Israel, because boy, the situation is about to heat up. I also want to respond to some unusually negative comments that I received on the last video, and I'm not sure if, I have to take some responsibility. Perhaps people just don't agree with my point of view, which is fine. Perhaps it's because my point of view was misunderstood. So I'm going to respond to some of these comments, and some of them are not even really related to the video itself, but just general comments that are not negative towards me, but just, I think, a bad attitude to have in general. And so I'm going to pontificate a little bit. But first, I want to tell you what's going on with Iran and Israel, okay? So in my last video, of course, because I'm trying to figure this stuff out as I go, and because I'm not a shill for either side, sometimes it's going to appear as though what I'm saying is contradictory, because I'm genuinely trying to figure things out, okay? It could go one way or it could go the other. And because we are doing, this is why I don't do, live broadcasts, because, there's just, for me as a thinking person who aggregates data, I need to sit with the information for a little while before I come to any sort of conclusion about what I think is going to happen next, or even some speculation. I need to sit with the information for a while. And that's what I do. And oftentimes I'll be accessing so much information throughout the course of a day. Like all of this stuff, I see all of this stuff, okay? And all of this informs my opinion, whether it's this geosynth, OSINT stuff. This is what I do all day, and I try to condense that into a 20-minute engaging video because I don't want to waste your time. Oftentimes, I'm going on tangents, and if you don't have at least a vague familiarity with the situation, then it might be hard to comprehend, and I don't have time to really go into all the details and do these 2-hour-long dragging on monologues about the situation. I don't want to waste your time, okay? So I cut to the chase most of the time. Now, here's what's going on with Iran and Israel. 86% of Israelis don't believe the official narrative. They're saying that 144 planes, we're talking about electronic warfare planes, the most advanced ones in the world, the most advanced strike platforms and strike packages in the world, the F-35s, F-16s, the most, I'm presuming, the advanced refueling tankers in the world, the most advanced military in the world. We are led to believe that 144 planes, 600 projectiles only resulted in 6 confirmed hits. And they're saying that they wiped out Iran's missile defense. They wiped it out completely, even though Iran has its own reverse engineered S-300, of which it manufactures one of these a month, and they've been doing that for several years already. Okay, but we're led to believe that they've completely wiped it all out, and that Russian electronic warfare and Chinese lasers weren't helping them shoot down these hundreds of quadricopter drones. Yeah, I'll get to that in just a moment. Now, the thing is, the Israelis are saying things that are contradictory. They're saying that they forewarned the Iranians in advance of this attack. Okay, so do you think that the Iranians, if forewarned of the attack in advance, are going to allow Israel to wipe out all, and this is what the Israelis are saying, all of the missile defense? Do you think they're going to allow them to do that? Do you think they're not just going to move these things? Because these are mobile launchers, mobile platforms. Okay, you don't think they're just going to say, okay, well, maybe we should move these things out of the way? And of course, there is little to no confirmed satellite imagery. There's a few confirmations and there's some questionable stuff, okay? Like this one here, you could see shadows, right? If you have the poor resolution, then that actually looks like, this is what it looks like here. See if I can get you that image. So this is what they're claiming, okay, was a destroyed facility. Can you see that on there? Okay, they're claiming this is how you do geosynth. So you look at the before image and the after image, and if it looks like it was blown up, then of course it probably was hit. This is one of their radars, okay, one of their main radars, but it turns out it was just a shadow, okay, it's just a shadow. And I can go into detail about all this stuff. All of this stuff informs my opinion. I don't just jump in the car and start rattling shit off. I'm researching hundreds of different articles. I'm listening to podcasts all day, 24/7. I'm putting in the work, guys. Okay, so I know some people are thinking that, oh, this guy's just talking out of his ass. I'm not. I guarantee you, sometimes I am, but usually that's more towards the end of the videos. So here's another example of this. So you can see, so they tried to say, this was another radar site. They tried to say that this was the result of an attack, right? That dark shading there, because that's usually how it looks when something gets bombed. But you can see elsewhere on the map, there's these odd shaded areas that come into play. So this is likely just some sort of light aberration and not a confirmation. Certainly not a confirmation that you would expect to see dozens of these types of satellite imagery. But we're just hearing non-stop cope on the Israeli side, and I'm going to tell you why this is so scary in just a moment, okay? Please stick with me. You're not going to hear this anywhere else. Now, this is another image that's floating around of an Iranian oil refinery. Now, they're claiming that this oil refinery was hit on the basis, so this was October 25th, okay? This was October 27th. This is Iran's biggest oil refinery. I believe they do 500,000 barrels a day or something to that effect. For starters, why would Israel just do one? Some people say, well, it was a warning shot. But honestly, who knows what's going on here? This could be some sort of shadow aberration again. It could be some kind of vehicle that's there. I mean, we don't know, right? And of course, if they did target the Iranian oil infrastructure, and then that would definitely, we would see a reprisal, which of course the Iranians are insisting they're going to do. So one of the things that came up in my last video is that, okay, so I'm saying that the attack was very flaccid and impotent, yet I'm also saying that Iran has to respond. And this is something I haven't been able to reconcile either. But in a way I can, and I'm going to provide you an explanation. But what I first want to say is this, is that if it's true that the world's most formidable aviational military was not able to defeat a near peer in what was supposed to be a strike to demonstrate capability, if it's true that the United States and Israel could not even get a fraction of these missiles and these projectiles past Iranian defenses, and it should be known that when I say projectiles, the majority of these were quadricopter drones, which came either from within Iran or from not too far outside the border regions. Okay, so there's dissident groups inside Iran who are doing these attacks, these terrorist attacks, from the Iranians' point of view. Okay, so if it's true that a near peer, Iran, not talking about Russia or China, if it's true that we were defeated by them, then we're in a whole lot of trouble. Because what does that really mean? If Israel, the lauded, most advanced military in the world, yeah, we've seen them blow up women and children left and right. We've seen them attack with impunity countries that have no air defense, but now they're going up against a country that has air defense. And the fact is, they never even entered Iranian airspace. They didn't go into Iranian airspace. So how do you, if you're an F-35, the whole thing is stealth, right? So if you're not going into Iranian airspace, you must suspect that they can see you on their radars. Now, they might not be able to see you until you get very close, but there's a reason why they hung back. Now, to give the Israelis the benefit of the doubt, this could have just been a recon by fire probing operation getting ready for the big one, which could be coming any day now, because Benjamin Netanyahu today said that indeed Israel will respond to the next aggression. And I'll give you the exact quote. This is from Israel Channel 13. The Israeli response to the drone attack on Prime Minister Netanyahu's home will look completely different to the strikes carried out on military targets in Iran by the Iranian Air Force. By the Israeli Air Force. Now, what do they mean by that? I think they mean an assassination, okay? But before I get into that speculation, I want to say that, understand, from a strategic point of view, this is a massive strategic defeat. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think that the Israelis drastically underestimated the Iranian capabilities, defense capabilities, and understand that Iran is a massive country. Okay, Israel can shoot down a lot of what comes into its country because it's a small airspace. You don't really need, you can get away with having fewer air defense systems. A country like Iran is 100 times bigger than Israel. You need 100 times the air defense to cover everything. So it's easy when you have a very tiny country and you have the world's most advanced, THAAD and Iron Dome and David's Sling and all these fancy types of air defense systems. It's much easier. And we've seen that in Russia. It's, imagine the same thing would happen if people were lobbing missiles into the United States. There's no way we would be able to stop all this stuff. And I think this is a realization that we're all having now in these wars in the last few years, is that just because you have formidable air defense doesn't mean that you're going to be able to cover massive areas. You're only going to be able to cover, points of interest. So I think what has happened here is that this is a strategic defeat, possibly for the West, and I caveat it with possibly because it looks as though the emperor has no clothes. When you look at the rather lackluster performance given here by the Israelis. So this is I believe this is a missile manufacturing facility. And you can see that several buildings were indeed hit. This looks fairly evident, fairly obvious. Again, who controls the satellites? We don't even, have control over that. It's very possible that somebody could just be editing these photos. There's a handful of companies who are in control of them. Most of them, in fact, are under the control of big companies like BlackRock. So you never really know if what you're seeing is actually the truth. But nonetheless, we'll give Israel the benefit of the doubt. We'll say that they hit, a dozen or so targets. But a dozen or so targets, 144 planes, and saying that, we've wiped out Iran's air defense when you forewarned them, these things just don't add up, okay? So I think what Israel is going to do now is, because this failed attack did not elicit the knee-jerk reaction that they were expecting from the Iranians, they are now going to proceed with some sort of high-level assassination of an official in order to provoke the Iranians to respond a little more. They absolutely need the United States to enter into this conflict, and Trump, Pompeo, and Lindsey Graham are just foaming at the mouth to take America to war. Regardless of what Trump says now to get elected, indeed, he will take us to war in the Middle East. There's no doubt about it. And a certain string of events is going to happen it's going to be like some October 7th type thing, and that's what they're going to use to justify it. And all the starry-eyed people are just going to fall right in line. They're going to fall for it, and we're going to find ourselves in another multi-trillion-dollar quagmire. And I say ourselves because America or Canada will get sucked into that as well. So I think what they have to do now, what Netanyahu has to do, is some kind of high-level assassination, possibly the Ayatollah, possibly the Ayatollah's son, possibly somebody really high up in the Iranian government. And they have that capability. That's one thing that the Mossad is very good at, as we've seen with the Haniyeh assassination, is they can decapitate if they want to. But the problem with decapitating guerrilla armies and unconventionally ranked armies like Hezbollah and Hamas, it's not like decapitating a regimented military where you have this very rigid chain of command. It's a far more resilient command structure. It would be like, trying to decapitate like the Taliban or, the Viet Cong or something. It's not quite that, because Hezbollah is a little bit more of a professional military than some of the aforementioned, but it's pretty much that, where decapitation strikes, they look good on paper, but they don't always work unless you are targeting a very strict top-down military command structure. Like if you were to decapitate the Russian military and the defense ministry and all those guys, I'm pretty sure that the situation would collapse, right? Because it's such a big operation that it requires that degree of compartmentalization. But when you have more switch hitters like you do with these guerrilla warfare, asymmetrical fighters, then you're going to have a lot more resilience to those styles of attacks. So I talked about how Israel did not enter Iranian airspace. There was an unidentified air system that some are claiming was noted, and this is part of the reason why the second and third phases of the attack weren't as successful as originally anticipated. Chinese lasers helping take down these quadricopter drones. These have been spotted in Iran before, so I would not be surprised if they didn't play a role. Clearly, we've seen video footage of dozens of interceptions of something happening. So we know, in fact, that there was a lot of projectiles in the sky. In terms of the big stuff, the air-launched ballistic missiles, were those able to be intercepted? We don't really know entirely. Nonetheless, all of these targets, these are not Iran's most important. Like, Iran is a country that builds everything underground. You really think they're going to build a building like this and it's going to be their main missile solid rocket fuel manufacturing facility, and they're going to paint it blue or whatever color that is? I mean, like, it just, none of this makes any sense. This was a building that was destroyed, by the way. So, I don't know. Some people are getting really worked up about my perspective here. I'm just trying to give you guys the information as I see it. This really doesn't look like Israel did a whole hell of a lot. And that's quite scary, because that leg of the triad, the Air Force, is supposed to be our strongest point. And if it's that inept that it can't even defeat a near peer, never mind China, who could probably produce like 1,000 of these S-300 type systems, S-400 type systems, I mean, that does not bode well for the way shit's going, especially when they're saying that China is conducting the largest ever military buildup in world history, according to a U.S. admiral. Now, let's talk a little bit about what the prognostics is for Iran's response, because this is where things get confusing. Iran is suggesting that it is indeed going to respond because there was one radar that was taken out that we confirmed with satellite imagery, and apparently 5 guys were killed, okay? So the IRGC chief commander sent a message to the Iranian army commander saying, bitter and unimaginable consequences await the Israeli regime for the aggression against Iran. 4 members of the Iranian army were recently killed in Israel's attack against Iran. I think that number has been bumped up to 5. Now, Trump is probably going to get elected, it seems like. If that's the case, then I would almost bet that Iran's going to make a move. If Trump's getting elected, Iran has no choice but to make nuclear weapons. In fact, I was listening to an interview with a former Mossad agent last night, and he is pretty sure that Iran already has nuclear weapons, or they have all the ingredients there to put it together. It's just simply a matter of a few days to put it all together into several nuclear weapons. They've demonstrated the ability to defeat the Israeli air defense, so they know that they can essentially get a nuke in there. If this mission was an actual failure, then that means that they're going to be a breakaway nuclear state. There's nothing we can do about it. But it starts to look as though if Trump's going to get elected and they know that an attack is probably coming, a much bigger attack, they may choose to attack beforehand, establish dominance. They're talking about 4,000 of these ballistic missiles. I can't see it being that extreme, but that's what some people are claiming. Some people dispute as to whether or not Iran even has that many missiles. Nonetheless, it appears as though they are going to respond. Okay, now the USA has responded to this, and they have said today at the UN that the US issued a warning to Iran, stating that there will be severe consequences if Iran engages in further hostile actions against Israel or US personnel in the region. Now, if we presume that the goal of this attack by Israel was to wipe out all of Iran's early radars, warning radars, and their entire, missile defense, which would be, that would not just be some kind of de-escalatory attack, okay? No, because of course that would set Iran up to be completely wiped out in the future. So there's nothing de-escalatory about this attack. What likely happened is that they planned to do a much bigger attack, but it failed because they realized they underestimated Iran's capabilities. Now, if that was the case, that they were trying to provoke a major knee-jerk retaliation from the Iranians, then it is COVID brain. Jeez, I still got this fever, guys. I've been having it for the last 3 weeks, and every time I'm like on the cusp of like an epiphany or realization, it just like, it's like this mental block. It's like this brain fog. But anyways, so if we assume that their goal was to try to provoke the Iranians and they failed, then what do we think is going to happen within the next 7 or 8 days? They're going to try some shit again. So I think what they're going to do is, how do they rile up the Iranians? Probably with what they do best, and that's assassinations. And that statement that was made today saying that the retaliation for the attack on Netanyahu's house will be responded to separately could be setting things up to justify another attack inside Iran that might push Iran over the edge to actually retaliate. And then, of course, you're going to ensnare the United States into a conflict, which I think Iran at this point knows is inevitable. So it's like whether it comes now or later doesn't really matter. Iran's as ready as they are going to be, okay? Netanyahu also said today that stopping the Iranian nuclear program is at the forefront of our minds for obvious reasons. I cannot share with you all our plans and actions in this regard. So I'm sure it's probably some James Bond type ish, right? Now, Israeli OSINT accounts are giving all kinds of excuses about this. And what tends to happen is you want to saturate the space with half-truths and misinformation after something like this happens. So even in defiance of what you're seeing with your own eyes, it creates some doubt, okay? Even though you can clearly see, like was the case when Iran attacked Israel, and you could see hundreds of missiles, or not hundreds, but dozens of missiles raining down on their target, they will put out all of this type of information. There has to be a name for it. I guess it's not really fake news. It's not really propaganda. It's just like these justifications for, why what you're seeing isn't real, to kind of invoke that consensus validity and try to make you think that maybe there's a lot of people out there to believe this, and they have all these bot farms and everything that make you believe that, yeah, maybe those 20 ballistic missiles that I clearly see falling on that base, maybe that isn't what happened, right? And they've proven in social psychology you can do this. So the space is saturated with misinformation right now, meant to misdirect and just kind of induce confusion in people. And, there's so many, a lot of this is just cope, but I think the Israelis were actually quite caught off guard by how badly this went. And that does not bode well for the US, for Israel, for NATO, because it says a lot. It says more about our capabilities to engage in a war with Russia or China. Because understand, this single incident was more significant than anything that we've seen in the Ukraine-Russia war up until this point. This F-35 versus an S-300, that's the first time it's happened, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe an F-16 has went up against Russian S-300 in Russia, possibly in Syria, but this is the first time, to my knowledge, that you have top-tier Russian and possibly Chinese technology and Iranian technology going up against the best strike platform in the world, okay? And if it is true that that strike platform failed, then we're in big trouble, especially considering there's 144 planes involved in that operation. Okay, now I want to respond to some of these comments real quick here. This skewed background here behind me, I don't have my camera properly set up. This is a real screen here. People think it's a green screen, and sometimes it gets a little like trapezoidal if I don't set the camera up right. Let me turn down the ISO a little bit here. I guess you don't have to read it. I can just read the comments. Okay, so yeah, I got a lot of heat on this video. I'm not sure why. It's almost like some people are disappointed that World War III didn't start right away. I've been telling you guys, I've been calling this ball game fairly accurately for a long time, but if you're not right like every day, then sometimes people, they start to lose faith, but that's okay because we're on the right track. So this is a comment that really rubbed me the wrong way, man. And it's got 713 likes. Oh my God. It's not a comment that's directed towards me. I feel sorry for this person and I want nothing to do with this. If this is the kind of mentality that I am promoting here in the preparedness community, I don't want any part of this. Listen to this. If something doesn't really happen soon, I'm going to stop buying and start eating my preps. I've spent my social security income check, I'm presuming that's what that means, every month starving myself. I'm over it. I'm 75 years old and I don't care. 713 thumbs up. I figure that I provide enough nuance and depth to my motivations for preparedness to not have to be encouraging this type of mentality. For starters, these are what are called panic preppers. You're going to burn yourself out. If you constantly need the prospect of shit hitting the fan every single day, you're going to burn yourself out. Okay? Intuitively, I'm an intuitive prepper. I've always intuitively known that things are coming to a head, that the world is going to shit, and eventually we're going to have to fend for ourselves. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's an enduring intrinsic motivation that is never going to be extinguished. If you're one of these people that just need and you're upset because World War III hasn't happened, listen, man, the more prepared I get, the more thankful I am that shit doesn't happen. People say, oh, you've invested so much in this lifestyle, and if nothing ever happens, you're not going to be validated. Not at all. Because I understand the hell that it's going to be. It is going to be absolute hell being in 100% in charge for the security, knowing that there's no law and order, and that everything boils down to what you as an individual do, that you can't survive if you don't grow your own food. That is going to be absolute hell. Okay? You can't call the electrician. You can't call the plumber. You can't call the butcher, the baker. You can't do any of that because it's all on you. It's going to be hell. So don't sit there and get upset because it doesn't happen. That's just stupid. And I'm not calling this person stupid. I'm calling this attitude stupid because it is. You spend your social security check every month starving yourself? Why would you do that? You're 75. You need those nutrients to keep yourself healthy. If you are struggling to that extent, then you're preparing for the here and now. Okay? I don't want you buying stuff from my store if this is the predicament that you're in. Okay? I've talked about low budget options. You should be cycling your pantry if this is the case, if you really are struggling in this way. And I just could not imagine myself being at that state in life and just waiting for the world to end and getting mad because the world's on it. Something's wrong, okay? I'm going to say something's wrong if that's the case. And I hope that you can find some sort of peace with this sort of thing and approach it from a different way, that you're not going to be hurting yourself physically, because I don't want this person to do damage to themselves because they're, preparing for some thing that might happen in the future. It should not come at the expense of the here and now. If anything, taking care of your body is going to be the most important thing, man. Your ability to run really fast, to move things, especially at 75, okay? There's some tough 75-year-olds. There's people who take care of their bodies. But if you're starving yourself, then no, just stop watching this stuff, okay? I don't care if all 713 people who like that comment never watch this channel again. If it means that this negative mentality, this cynical mentality is not going to be associated with my channel. All right? Losing my voice here. I'm thinking we don't have a clue what Israel or Iran are planning. That's the next comment. You're right to a degree, but we still can triangulate via OSINT, and most of our predictions have been correct. After all, I did predict we'd be at war with Iran in January. I constantly remind people about that because, and I still think that it's going to happen. I'm not even going to say probably, it's going to happen, because Israel or Iran has to do something before the election. If not, and this is where I'm going to maybe give myself a little bit of an off-ramp, admittedly, but between now and January 6th or whenever the inauguration is, yeah, things are going to get wild. Absolutely. Iran have been 24 hours before having nukes for the last 10 years, for fuck's sakes. That's what this individual says. I would challenge that comment in saying that it's incorrect. Iran has never had the amount of enriched uranium it has right now. They've never been as militarily powerful as they have right now. They've never had the deployment systems, the advanced deployment systems and hypersonic deployment systems like they do now. They've never demonstrated the capability to get 100 of these ballistic missiles past Israel's defense, okay? The most sophisticated air defense in the world. They've done that. That wasn't the last 10 years. They've never had a strategic partnership with Russia and also getting covert help with the Chinese. So no, this person has no idea what they're talking about. Period, point blank. I don't know, man. This next guy says, all of this, let's agree to take turns striking each other, seems sus. What kind of war is that? I'm starting to question what's really going on. I know the world's a stage, but this whole thing is weird. Respectable comment. I respect this guy. Because he's thinking, right? He's thinking, even though there's an explanation for this. And the reason is nuclear weapons. You're looking at wars of the past that came in World War II, and you're saying, okay, this is how people used to duke it out. Two guys get on a field, two armies get on a field, they settle it right then and there. It's different now because nuclear weapons are involved. So there has to be some reservation on the part of the belligerents to not take it to the nuclear level, to keep it in conventional terms. So we should be happy that that is the case, right? We should be happy that they're not going crazy with it. It's very complicated. There's proxy conflicts, but it's because the only reason why, it's because of nukes. That's it. That's the answer to your question. That's why it's different now. If the countries in World War II took this long to retaliate, and this is the question, this is the comment right underneath that guy's comment. If the countries in World War II took this long to retaliate, it would still be going on today. World War II, they never had nuclear weapons until it ended, right? This guy says, buy anything off your site is fine for a millionaire. Just a 420-gram can of Mountain House Classic spaghetti with meat sauce is $60. Number one, there's thousands of items on our website, things from knives to multi-tools that, no, you absolutely don't have to be a millionaire. But let's hear what he has to say. And this is not even enough for two people. And that's true. Excuse me. This is why I always provide low budget options. I've done plenty of budget videos. I say if you're broke, don't spend your social security check. Go buy rice, beans, Mylar bags. Go buy yourself a big bulk can of tuna. I had to do it for many years. When I was in college, I was a starving student. I've been there, done that. I can relate to this point of view, okay? But there's also a bit of whininess in this comment that I'm going to talk about. So one meal a day for two people, small portion, is $1,800 a month. So if you want larger portions, you can double that. And if you want to eat 3 times a day, I don't think this guy's math is entirely correct, to be brutally honest, because he should be measuring it in calories as opposed to grams, and you can't always ascertain calories from grams. You sometimes can, but anyways. So for one person to eat, you're looking anywhere from $5,400 a month to eat. If you have a family, it will be $20K a month, LMAO. Then you have to buy all the other stuff, tools, shelter, bunco, ammo, alarms, water supply, gas, power. That will break the bank even for a casual military. No, it won't. There's plenty of ways to do it. All the prices are set at a very high price. Yep, I mean, that's inflation, buddy. That's what it is, man. I mean, we would love to have the prices lower. I would love to sell the shitty brands that people are going to hate and despise me for when they start eating it. I would love to sell all that because the margins are great, but we provide people with options, okay? The only thing I'm not going to do is sell a very low-grade product. You can go and buy that from somewhere else. I'm not putting my name on that shit, okay? No matter how hard you try to push me into doing it. There are plenty of options, my friend. If you are struggling to prep, you don't have to break the bank to do this stuff. Yes, and then you're also looking at it like too short term. It's a lifelong process. I've been doing this for 15 years. And people look at what I got and they say, holy cow, I could never do that. You got to think about, you're working for 15 years. And if you're like me, you're working 16-hour days for 15 years. You can accomplish a lot if you're not going out clubbing and spending your money on dumb shit, which is what a lot of people do, which is why they can't buy stuff. I'm not saying that's what this guy does. I'm just saying in general, a lot of people, when they really look at their budget, they're spending things on, but if you're not really committed, if you're not like intrinsically motivated, in terms of the Mountain House, there is definitely a premium that you pay. And there's undoubtedly, you have to be in a certain tax bracket or you have to have a certain amount of savings in order to get yourself a generous food supply. But this idea that these numbers that he's throwing out, like $20,000 a month, that is completely untrue. For the starters, you're never going to just eat freeze-dried food. Freeze-dried food is meant to be paired with the bulk staple goods, like rice. So if you buy like a can of Mountain House or you buy some NutriStore steak or chicken in a can, you're going to be using that, little portions of that. You're not just going to be eating that whole can of, Mountain House at once. You're going to be, you could if you want to do the preset meals, but you're combining it with certain things and you're kind of spreading it out. So there's ways to do it, and it is what it is. Freeze drying is expensive. Food is expensive. It's like, what do people not want the option to buy it? I get that it's pricey, but this is the thing. Like you don't just, you don't just get fully prepared right away. This guy says, should preface the title with, I think. And I'm going to push back on this one. And you guys can't even see that there. Apologize for that. The screen's out of whack. I'm going to push back on this one because, no, this is not just what I think. If it was what I think, I would watch one news report and then give you some speculation about what I'm seeing. I'm aggregating data from hundreds of sources all day, and that's what informs my point of view, which quite frankly has been very on point for the last 3 years. Okay, if I made a compilation video of all of my accurate predictions, then anyways, I mean, what's the point? And, again, I'll make one video and I'll say the wrong thing and I'll get a bunch of comments like this for some reason. I don't know what it is. Iran and Israel are like two kids fighting each other on a playground. They're hitting each other and saying, that didn't hurt. Eventually one of them will cry and run to get his big brother. Then the other one will get his big brother and then the real fight will start. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely downplaying that occurs on both sides. And I'm always looking at both sides. I criticize Russia's downplaying of shit all the time, okay? And to the ire of the Russia bros, you guys know that. I do that all the time, but quite frankly, the West has been lying a lot more lately. And Israel, yeah, they deserve to be reprimanded for all the shit that they've done in the Gaza Strip. And if you think the genocide of children and women is okay, then go watch another channel. I don't need you as a subscriber. Excuse me. Remember 2 years ago when you said, this is it, Pepper Ridge Farms. What was I referring to? Pepper Ridge Farms? When I said, this is it. That could have been anything. This is it, as in, we're now officially in a pandemic. This is it, as in, Russia is invading Ukraine. What was I referring to? People will often reference my thumbnails. And if the same mentality of people who are, postponing and foregoing their current needs for some event which may happen in the future, then that's not what I want to be encouraging. So if you actually watch the videos, I explain everything in the videos, so maybe people are just reading the titles. I don't know. That's on them. I got tired of waiting and ate all my preps. Used my toilet paper too. I'm down to napkins and a couple tuna cans. I think that guy's just cracking jokes. But good on you, man. Cycle those preps. That's what you're supposed to do. I remember when you said they wouldn't be able to win in Gaza. I never said that. They wouldn't be able to handle Hezbollah. I'm more inclined to say that, and that is the case. Israel is getting their asses handed to them in Lebanon right now. They have lost, I can't even remember how many troops it is in the last 72 hours, but I believe it's the most they've lost up until the war this time. And it doesn't matter if you decapitate a guerrilla fighting force because they'll metastasize nonetheless. So no, I never said that they wouldn't win in Gaza. I said it would be very difficult. Of course, I mean, they have full spectrum dominance over the air, over the entire space. They control the borders. Of course, they're eventually going to win. But are they going to be able to defeat the idea of Hamas in the minds of all of those people now who've watched their children die? No, there's going to now be people who spend their every last breath trying to get revenge. Okay? And people will say, well, yeah, you can defeat ideas. They defeated the idea of Hitler in World War II. That was different because that was a regimented military. Okay? Once the top guy goes, the whole thing collapses. That's not the case with these resistance-style fighting forces. It's much different than that. And, I just don't think they're ever going, especially, their global relations with other countries. I mean, Israel's become a pariah on the global stage. Unless you're like Rudy Giuliani and some of these other people who are trying to protect their own ass, I mean, nobody's falling for that shit anymore. There's just too much, when they boast about how they can blow up a civilian building and everybody's like, okay, that's fine because there might be a terrorist in there who lived there once. Yet if you ever seen that in Ukraine, if you ever seen Russia do that in Ukraine, it would be all over the news how Vladimir Putin was committing genocide. And it's a contradiction. No civilians, no, we're fed what they want us to know. Nice show though. Yeah, anyways, I never said all that, what he said. Iran had already said if the damage is minor and on military targets, they will not respond. And that they actually didn't. People say, one official will say something offhand. They don't speak for the entire government. And in fact, there are multiple levels of the Iranian government, from the Ayatollah to the IRGC chief to politicians to the foreign minister, who've all said they will respond. And some of the people who are the most knowledgeable on this particular issue, who are hardline in the direction of Iran, and they have no vested interest in bringing the United States into this thing, they're saying that they're going for blood and they're going to respond. So it is what it is. Your research is very poor on this one, because the Israeli planes were definitely over Iran. No, they weren't. And there are pictures of explosions and fires, and there are satellite images. No, they weren't. And it's showing before and after. Yeah, I showed you some of the satellite images. It's really, literally, guys, it's between 6 to a dozen buildings at best. There was no pictures, videos of explosions. Many of them were debunked. I think there was one credible video of an explosion. There was one video of some smoke, or an image of some smoke off in the distance. But yeah, this guy has no idea what he's talking about for this particular issue. Maybe he does for other things. For this issue, you don't know what you're talking about. There were no Israeli planes over Iran, I assure you. Even the Israelis admit that. So that's just a bunch of bullshit. This is why I sometimes just avoid the comments. I love my viewers. I know I can tell by the likes on the videos that thousands of people support what I'm doing, but unfortunately, it's always the cranky people that love to comment. And I just, if I responded to all these all the time, it would just be like, yeah. There was a 2.5 magnitude earthquake under the Iranian desert a couple weeks ago. This guy says, all you need to know about nuke capability. Actually, with that earthquake, the reason why I didn't even bother reporting on it at the time, it was at such a depth that it would not even be, it was too deep to be considered a nuclear test. And earthquakes happen in Iran. I think there's like a major earthquake every day, like a +4 earth. It's a very seismic country. So your video yesterday, this guy says, was how Israel's attack on Iran was a nothing burger and mainly reconnaissance. And today you're basically admitting the damage level Israel caused was so massive that it warrants Iran's nuclear response. No, I never said that. I don't think I've ever said in any video that Israel wiped out. I said that that's what Israel said. And if that's because, guys, listen, I'm just a brosin, okay? I'm aggregating this data just like you. I don't claim to have a definitive answer. Sometimes you really have to listen to what I'm saying, because sometimes I'm saying something from the perspective of one side and the other, and then I try to give my assessment to the best of my ability to try to delineate and say, okay, this is what I think. I think in this case, the truth is somewhere in the middle. The Israelis drastically underestimated the Iranians. They were going for blood, but the Iranians checked them. And maybe there's more damage than the Iranians are letting on. A little bit more, okay? So the reason why I said a nothing burger is because that's what it appears. And this is a fluid situation. This is why I don't do live broadcasts, because it's pointless. You might as well, it's really just like reaction content. If you're doing a live broadcast, people are watching you react to stuff, and maybe you're aggregating data on the fly, but to try to make sense of any of it, and there's so much fake stuff out there, especially with this particular incident. I would say half of what was being put out about the incident was later turned out to be fake. Somebody writes here, if something don't happen, I'm done. You're a panic reactor, not a prepper. That's why, or how you prep, you want to go, then stop whining. I don't think this guy's talking to me, because this is literally my philosophy. I actually think what happens sometimes is people will leave a comment. I'm thinking that this guy was responding to the top comment with the 713 likes. I think that's who this comment is geared towards. So I agree with this guy. I mean, don't be a panic prepper. Don't be a panic reactor. This guy says, this wasn't even an inning. This was a batting practice the day before the game. I agree, man. I think that, look at what has happened right now. People are like, oh, you know, why are you so in such a manic state? That's what somebody said the other day. Gold is $2,740. Okay? For the first time ever, we have Korean troops fighting in Europe. There is no nuclear treaties. There's no Russian ambassador in the United States. Right now, you have the Russian mobile ICBMs currently on duty, moving around, not notifying the United States as to where they are. You have China gearing up for a massive embargo on Taiwan. You have Israel and Iran exchanging blows, something we've never seen before in history, and we're on the brink of Iran being a threshold nuclear state. And you wonder why I'm energized about this. Oh yeah, nothing's going on. You see, these people who shit doesn't happen right away, right? It's almost like that's how Hollywood has conditioned people to think. It's happening, man. If you're burning out from this, get the fuck out. I don't care at this point in time. I'm doing this for me, quite frankly, at this point, because I want to know what the hell is going on. This guy's saying, you're always upset when World War III doesn't start. At what point was I upset in the video that World War III didn't start? Quite the opposite. I think I've explained that enough. I don't want World War III to start, and anybody else who does is delusional. Just outright delusional. You don't want to ever have to use your doomsday preps. This guy says, notice Canadian Prepper does not respond to anyone's comments here. Bummer deal, CP. Ta-da! And then he proceeds to say, okay, I get it. I would love to respond to comments. But guys, if I did that, not only would my blood pressure go up because I'd always have to sift through this kind of stuff, but I wouldn't have any time to do the research. And because things are moving at such a fast pace nowadays, it's like, I'm sorry, man, but there's 2,500 comments on this video. CP, please comment as to what happens to gun safes that might have electronic key entry if when EMP hits, how to get into the safe, maybe do a video CP. Okay, it's a good question. The truth is, most of those have manual overrides. They have an analog key that you can use to get into it. It's a good question. I mean, I don't think it's a question that's worth a whole video, because that would be the answer to the question right at the beginning. Pretty much every safe that I have, and I have plenty of safes, gun safes, and portable safes, even the small ones that you put handguns in, they have keys that manually override. So, I mean, if you can't do that, I guess you got to bust it open with a sledgehammer or something. A whole lot of word salad. That's all we get out of Nate. Okay, well, if you think that's what it is, then you can get the fuck out. I don't give a shit. Nate is clueless, this guy says. You see why I don't read this stuff? Remember when Nate kept saying as soon as Ukraine gets F-16s, Russia and NATO will go to war? That is true. The reason why I think we haven't, well, we did see it though, when you actually think about what transpired immediately after that, you had a massive flare-up in tensions. You had a lot of things happen right around that time. The F-16, well, of course, you had the invasion of Russia, right? And that in itself is like, how is it that the Russians have so much strategic forbearance that they're willing to allow Kursk to be invaded? The degree of interoperability with NATO and Ukraine, I don't think the F-16 has been completely realized yet, but this is a fair criticism, and I agree. This is something I've thought about, right? Because I did indeed say when the F-16 is a symbol of a certain degree of interoperability that essentially makes Ukraine's military equivalent with NATO. Now, I don't think they're completely utilizing the F-16 yet. But I will say that since the F-16 has entered the theater, we've had a massive uptick in nuclear tension. Okay, remember a few weeks ago when we were really on the brink of potentially things going nuclear, when the Russians altered their nuclear doctrine? This, of course, was in anticipation of launching attacks deep inside Russian territory. But the F-16 represents something, okay? And I agree that, I don't think I necessarily said that it would be immediate and that it would be, instantaneous as soon as the first F-16. Maybe I did say that in one of my rants one day. But I still actually think that it's true. I still think that when you see that, and now that you're seeing North Korean troops file into Russia in Kursk, you're going to see justification for NATO troops on the ground. A lot of this stuff has been checked, right? So they might be using the F-16s, but are they using the F-16s to attack inside Russia at all? We don't know. And this is where it gets kind of convoluted. So, yeah, I agree with you on that one. That's definitely something that I've been thinking about lately. Don't fool yourselves. Iran has never stopped their goal of acquiring nuclear weapons. Well, I mean, nuclear weapons, that's the Second Amendment of the planet, man. I mean, would you want someone to take your right to defend your country away from you? Of course, every country is going to want nuclear weapons unless they're under a nuclear umbrella. Look at North Korea. Nobody fucks with them. And they got nuclear weapons. I don't agree with the North Koreans at all in terms of how their society is structured. But hey, if that's what they want to do, if they haven't revolted against Kim Jong-un yet, hey man, go for it. Nate, you're getting a lot of flack in the comments. I've watched your videos for a couple of years and found them informative, but do feel that something has changed in you. Are you okay? You seem to be becoming kind of manic, as I already expressed. Yes. Yes, because shit's hitting the fan in slow motion. So yeah, I make no apologies for that. Your disdain for Israel is showing through. So what? I don't like women and children, dying in the thousands and allowing it to happen. And I don't like that. So if my disdain for that is showing through, then good, because you should have disdain for that. If not, then I have disdain for you. And this is not to say that, look, some of the most anti-Israel occupation, because not just Israel, but the occupational aspect, are people like Noam Chomsky, Norman Finkelstein, Gabor Mate, Aaron Mate, Jeffrey Sachs, John Mearsheimer, Amy Goodman. The list goes on and on. They're all Jewish people, okay? And in fact, they took the Capitol over. That Jewish group that was against what was happening in the Gaza Strip. So you can be against what happened on October 7th, and you can be against the mass murder that ensued thereafter. And when you really look at the history of that occupation and all the crazy religious zealotry that goes on when people are expelled from their homes and they watch their homes bulldozed right in front of their eyes just because some religious book said that this is supposed to be the case years ago, and the world watches and does nothing, as if you wouldn't fight back. Okay, so, this is what I hate most about the contradiction. We're supposed to be like freedom-loving people who are going to defend our rights, but when other people around the world try to do that, all of a sudden, they're terrorists. And indeed, there's some crazy, people out there. There's some crazy nut jobs, like the ISIS crowd, and even like some of the people who represent the more extremist factions of Islam, crazy people, right? And but of course, the same thing is true with whether you're of the Judaic faith or Christian faith. There's extremists everywhere. And when extremists get to doing what extremists do, it's never good for anybody. Oh boy, I'm really losing my voice. Well, it was nice knowing you fellas. Looks like we might not be leaving funny comments anymore. I hope we do. I hope we do. Oh, it looks like this guy has a Star of David as his avatar. I mean, that's good. I'm glad that, people can, I want to listen to that perspective. I just listened to an hour-long podcast with the former Mossad agent. I always try to hear the other side. It's just that it becomes really, really hard to justify a lot of the shit that's going on right now. CP has been talking like this for years. Same old shit, this guy says. Yeah, and what is different between now and 5 years ago, dumbass? Don't watch the channel anymore. Period, point blank. Is there anything that's different between now and 5 years ago? Holy shit. Nate gives too much credit to Iran, or you underestimate them. I mean, these people have, after all, been preparing for this very moment for the last 30-odd years. Maybe we're underestimating them just a little bit and overestimating our capabilities. You cannot extrapolate what you do in Gaza and Lebanon. And even in Lebanon, they're not having as much success on the ground because they have actual professional trained soldiers fighting for Hezbollah. You can't extrapolate that to a near-peer nuclear threshold state with modern air defense systems. But if you want to, go ahead and let's see what happens. You'll be going to war. In fact, unfortunately, probably not me, but our children will be the ones who get drafted. If you skip CP's video to every other day, you'll get a better update. If you skip his videos for a month, it'll be the same. Okay, well, again, it's just like, dog pile, right? Lots of trolls commenting on the video lately, this guy says, or this girl. And you know what I think it is? Sometimes when you push certain buttons in the algorithm, I think they unleash the army on you. There are armies of troll farms out there, and I think that's what a lot of this is. But we know these accounts. I see these accounts all the time. They get outed in community notes. They're people who are in other countries, usually an Asian country like India, and they're paid to write comments, and they're working on like 20 screens at once, and there's video evidence of this out there. And because they know that if you can get enough people making it appear as though a certain topic is supported, then it's going to encourage people to, be more sympathetic to that point of view. Like, let's say, you want people to support Ukraine. Well, you pay hundreds, if not thousands of people, and I'm not saying this is the case. It could work both ways. Could work for Russia as well. Russia has bot farms, troll farms as well. Just using this as an example. For all you sensitive people out there, let's just say Russians, okay? Let's say Russia had a bunch of bots out there who were like, yay, we love Russia, and they have the little flag icon in the comment and all that. That's going to make you believe that there are more people who espouse a certain point of view, and that's going to make you perhaps more reticent about your point of view on that particular issue, even if you are hardline. Because then you start thinking like, holy cow, there really is a lot of people who support this. It's the fallacy of consensus validity. Anyways, this is about all I can take. I went much longer than I planned today. I got to get home and get some R&R. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that.